My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system, which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. Erica Lorraine Spencer here. The following is an audio version of video evidence that is captured for purposes of mass distribution, which is why I am capturing it and sharing it on the podcast for evidentiary purposes and also to reveal the wealth of documentation that extends beyond what it is that I document on podcasts. Much of the video and images will be published onto the YouTube channel, the P.O.C, and it is also shared on the Google Drive. Again, this is for purposes of revealing what I remain subject to, which is federal group stalking and monitoring. It is a demonic system of state surveillance that the government is practicing in concert with the people of the state, and it should be known and well understood that for the government to engage in federal group stalking and monitoring, this is a crime that is committed with a criminal purpose to threaten the life of an American citizen. This is to conspire to murder and or permanently kidnap an American citizen while engaging in a perpetual sex offense in concert with the people of the state. Monday, May 11th, 2025. It's currently 4:57 a.m. as the timestamp clearly reflects. And this is video documentation that is revealing evidence of irreversible obstruction of justice. It is irreversible because the entity is engaging in what is a pattern of theft of my intellectual property and what is video evidence that is to be submitted against the government that's engaging in what is public corruption. And this public corruption is posing a threat to my life, to my safety, to my well-being, to my liberty, and to my reputation. The entity is engaging in a pattern of theft of my intellectual property, which is also the video evidence, the evidence itself that is proving the fact that the government is engaged in gang stalking and that the government is engaged in gang stalking with the people of the state. So the following video that I am going to play is documentation, which is additional proof, corroborating proof about what pre-existed my documentation of the Los Angeles Police Department in Los Angeles at Alvarado Gardens, where on this day, on April 2nd, 2024, I am documenting, like I am every other day, the entity engaging in federal group stalking and monitoring, which I refer to in short as gang stalking, because that's what it is. So the entity is gang stalking me on April 2nd, 2024 in this specific environment, and I am creating videos speaking to a means of harassment and criminal threats by the gang stalking entity. And then I'm also going into what is evidence of pre-existing video documentation that is my intellectual property. It is video evidence proving gang stalking of the state actor, the same state actor, LAPD, that was documented on October 16, 2018. And this video evidence, 3 specific videos are stolen. Everything from October 16, 2018 is stolen. I had those 3 videos documenting the LAPD. They're engaging what is criminal summoning through the exercise of fictitious authority by mission of a committed, through a traffic stop. So this is at approximately at 4 minutes and 51 seconds. It is regarding state actor Los Angeles Police Department on October 16, 2018. So this is speaking to, again, a tremendous amount of history. And this is, again, invaluable evidence, which is speaking to, I didn't just come up with a specific environment as of 2024. And none of the entity that has stolen my content can, under any circumstances, even reasonably contend that it is content that belongs to them or that they thought of. But the entity destroying, removing, stealing my evidence, which the entity has because the documentation from October 16, 2018 is not in my Google Drive folder, and I did not lose it. I did not move it. The entity is engaged in federal stalking, stole it, destroyed it. I no longer have access to it. I no longer have custody of it. And I didn't consent to that either. In the same way, I didn't consent to surveillance. So the entity that's engaged in surveillance is the entity that is stealing the property, that is also proving that that entity is gang stalking. Okay. So, like I stated, at approximately 4 minutes and 51 seconds, this is in the video that I'm going to play now. And also, I'm going to convert this into the podcast so that you can listen to it as well. But it is a screen recording that will be published with regard to obstruction of justice that this entity that is still targeting me to date in real time, including while I capture this video of evidence that this gang stalking entity has already committed stolen evidence. It is a video that will be published on the P.O.C. website at thisisthepoc.wordpress.com and on the YouTube channel, the P.O.C., where the entity is not only engaged in a pattern of stealing documentation and content, misrepresenting it as its own, but as it's published on the social media platform YouTube, YouTube is engaged in an ongoing, intentional, and continuous deliberate act of suppressing my evidence, namely things such as the platform not operating in the way in which it is designed, such as videos that should be playable by relatable content that is incapable of occurring when the entity is causing the videos to appear in a different format, a format other than the way that it should be. For example, a short video not appearing in short form where you can clearly select a link of relatable content. It appears in what is long form where you're not able to see the relatable content, and you don't even have the ability to click on see what videos are attached to it when the entity engages in that form of averting justice, obstructing justice, which is in the form of suppressing evidence, which is speaking to how you are able to identify the pattern of conduct, seeing it yourself in video evidence published on the internet, because the courts are corrupt. The people are corrupt. The police are corrupt. They're gang stalking. So YouTube is also engaged in what is suppressing my evidence by the manipulation of views. So, for example, when something gets 25 views, the next day I see that it's back down to 0, or it goes from 25 views down to 14 views. This is what is routinely occurring on YouTube. It is criminal conduct. It's the entity is doing so while I'm subject to gang stalking, which is committed by the government in concert with the people of the state with the intent to engage in criminal defamation, kidnapping, murder, ultimately. This is criminal conduct that the platform YouTube is engaging in, and being on your platform is not permitting your ability to interfere with what is a federal case. And the YouTube channel is clearly identifying that I'm not posting funsies and jokes and any sort of fable or fiction. The entity is also that's engaged in surveillance, knows exactly who I am and the substance of what I'm publishing. And it is biased and interested and invested in suppressing my evidence as well. But nonetheless, I want to get back to at 4 minutes and 51 seconds in this video that I'm going to play now, State Actor Los Angeles Police Department on October 16, 2018. That's the substance of what I'm discussing in that video. And also, it's referring to what is the state facilitating venue, that is the Metropolitan Courthouse in Los Angeles, California. The LAPD committed an unlawful detention and exercise of fictitious authority by gang stalking as a police department, the same police department that's gang stalking me at Alvarado Gardens on this day that I'm documenting in 2024, and who engaged in a traffic stop as a means of targeting, discrimination, and harassment as an entity in the specific environment, which is referred to as criminal summoning by the entity engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring. This video evidence revealing what was committed by the public entity is missing, based on the criminal acts of irreversible obstruction that is intended to conceal targeting and the conspiracy to permanently kidnap and murder, where the entity is targeting via corrupt law enforcement agencies such as the LAPD and corrupt courthouses such as Metropolitan Courthouse in Los Angeles, California. The significance of, in other words, of stealing my evidence pursuant to what is revealing the specific environment where you are targeting and not engaging in any exercise of authority pursuant to the doctrine of reasonable suspicion You are gang stalking as a police department that's engaged in criminal summoning, as opposed to having reasonable suspicion to pull me over for failure to wear a seatbelt. And that's the malice whereby the same gang stalkers that are targeting me by helicopter in the specific environment at Alvarado Gardens use that same malice to engage in what is an October 16, 2018 documented act of criminal summoning, as I have referred to it, where the entity doesn't have any jurisdiction under the law and the Constitution because they're engaging in criminal surveillance. And it's also a method of targeting me and harassing me and threatening me because they're bearing weapons and exercising authority that they don't have. And this is before I was able to prove the fact that the entity was indeed targeting. But the circumstances of that traffic case is why I documented it on video, 3 videos, by the way. And in those videos, before I came up with a naming convention, such as the specific environment, such as engineered light, I captured it in that video. And the LAPD is engaged in what is stalking, which I would be putting in the playlist on YouTube under the pattern of conduct of the corrupt law enforcement agencies stalking me routinely by police, fire, and ambulances, where they are engaging in that pattern of conduct. And that playlist would be federal group stalking and monitoring by the state of California, including law enforcement agencies, fire departments, and ambulance operators. This traffic stop that the entity engaged in was a malicious guise of the same pattern of conduct. And the specific environment is what establishes that. And it is also serving to personally identify state actors who should be subject to federal prison. The entity engages in stealing this video documentation, by the way, not because I'm lying, not because I'm making it up, not because it makes me look crazy, but because of the probative value, but because of the historical context regarding what I have been single-handedly proving from the beginning as early as 2018. While I was practicing law with Michael Bialis's law offices in West Hills, California, where I relocated from San Bernardino County, who was gang stalking, like I'm documenting on a daily basis, relocating from San Bernardino County to Los Angeles, practicing law, and then finding that the same pattern that I needed to document in order to prove and establish it. And upon having this suspicion, I am confirming my suspicions and documenting. This video evidence is stolen, and even the entity stealing it is proof of the exact pattern of conduct. The entity is, under all circumstances, always proving legitimate my documentation that it seeks to steal. It's also relevant that the entity that's engaged in what is supposedly investigating is not conducting a legitimate investigation when it is also the one that has stolen my evidence, proving that that same government that would assert an investigation is the same government that was gang stalking in the first instance. And this is, again, the inherent conflict with regard to a government keeping an American citizen under surveillance without their knowledge and consent, and then seeking to murder them and defame their character in order to get away with it. So the entity that's not able to gang stalk me and create the illusion that I suffer from mental illness, as I prove it through video evidence, the entity then steals that evidence. That is also confirming the fact that I suffer no mental illness, by the way, which I don't need Satan's or the corrupt government's validation. I know that my documentation establishes it. And my documentation also shows how the gang stalkers themselves are mentally ill. In fact, it's psychopathic antisocial disorders that is resulting in this behavior where they are engaging in what is this conspiracy to target one person together that's entirely demented on its face and in substance. And that is where you would analyze any other person's behavior and assess their mindset. That is mental illness in effect, actually. But nonetheless, this is documentation addressing that. I'm going to go ahead and play this video now. The removal of the video evidence, 3 of them, is based upon my publishing and detailing the pattern of conduct and the identities of the actors targeting. And this is irreversible obstruction of justice by the entity. All right, I'm going to play the video now. This video is captured on, as you can see on the screen, and I'm going to read the caption for those listening on the podcast. Video that's documented on April 2nd, 2024 at 3:27 and 45 seconds. I am in Los Angeles at Alvarado Gardens at 1800 to 1818 North Alvarado Street in Los Angeles, California at 90026. And I am documenting all day long the entity gang stalking by helicopter in concert with the people of the state under an idle sun that remains over me, which is the specific environment where I am being targeted.
Just want to
I want you to hear that amplification. This is going toward, again, I've been speaking to what is the enhancement for what shall be time in federal prison for every person that lives at Alvarado Gardens. I was hired here by speaker companies to engage in the criminal pattern of conduct in conformity to the state's long documented pattern of conduct. And that's what is occurring at the facilitating venue of Alvarado Gardens. It is currently 3:28 p.m. and with simultaneity to my writing down LAPD, the state, immediately the entity starts sounding helicopter activity. This is not only the demonic behavioral pattern, that is with simultaneity to what I do, or as I document, for example, something that enrages the entity, or also anything that I do on a communication device with simultaneity, the demon-possessed entity creates audible activity. That's the demonic feature, understand, which is relevant to terrorism. It is also relevant to the pattern of conduct of the entity waging an ongoing threat while you document the people of the state. It is also the criminal elements of monitoring, which is corroborating the state's pattern of conduct where group stalking is ongoing. This is the light source. This is the light source at what is 3:29 p.m. Remember, the entity is maintaining at 8:23 a.m. It's right here. All right, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. That's 7 hours later. And this is the entity that is engaged in ongoing stalking by helicopter. And that's what Tiffany Sherez, Young Kim, or Min Kim of 1804, number 4. Tiffany Sherez, those are demons that are crossing path while you're seeing the impossible light activity in the shade. They're all walking around in impossible light activity. There is no sun that would be present for an excess, again, how many hours while I'm right here, because it was rising in alignment to my living room window this morning. So this is the side of the building where it was at 8:23. Take a look at that video this morning at 8:23 in the morning. It has been hours later. There is no natural environment. There is no iteration of the natural environment where the sun is going to be present over the same property. And this is what the entity is engaging on an ongoing basis. And so as I'm documenting, you're understanding the demon possession, the invisible condition of Luke Powell, a third-party group stalker who comes into my office talking to me, whose audible activity is tantamount to a threat of civil litigation. This is an entity that is threatening while it is monitoring. Understand the layers that are there in that audible activity. While he is also present on behalf of the state, he's going to federal prison, first of all, and any and every court, including this one in Los Angeles, any court in San Bernardino, the entity has been documented. The state of California is an entity, a public entity that is, this is a matter of public corruption. They're monitoring in this state. And this is the entity whose audible activity in the specific environment is also legally relevant. Everybody, first of all, at Alvarado Gardens is going to federal prison. The entity is waging a threat sounding helicopter activity in conformity to a documented pattern of conduct. I just showed you the specific environment at 8:23 a.m. on video. The entity has a light source outside while I'm standing in front of that same position I just stood right now at 3:30 p.m. is the current time right now, and the light source is still over me while I'm standing in front of the same leasing office at the same address. In addition, you're looking at what is the ongoing hallmarks, such as your shadows appearing above you or in the shade, light that's manifesting in light and doesn't disappear when you step into it. There's no shadow. It illuminesces more. While you're looking at psychopaths who are driving all around, walking all around as though nothing is happening. Everything is, as it is. Those are demons that are pacing all around. This is what they're doing. So a psychopath that's pacing all around you. The psychopath is a spirit, a dark spirit. This is demon possession over a people who are surrounding you, pacing all around like cockroaches in that engineered light, including in the sky space by helicopter. And I want to document that. That's why I captured video. The entity immediately sounds helicopter activity while it is monitoring ongoing documentation. This is speaking to what is the enhanced time in federal prison. You have a lot of people, I don't care, it doesn't matter how aged they are, it doesn't matter if they're physically handicapped, it doesn't matter if they are not natural born citizens, they will do their time in federal prison and then they're going to be deported. They can do their time in federal prison and with whatever physical incapacities they have, it's not legally relevant. It is in no way competing with the interests of the targeted individual whose life is subject to an ongoing unlawful threat by a government who is stalking and coming into my office while the entity is sounding helicopter activity and using the substance of their audible activity, a whole demon that's group stalking, okay? And mentioning the fact that they are going to, having no grounds to do so, even if it was not the public entity that's monitoring, having no grounds to have anything entertained in a civil court. I want to be clear, this is monitoring and it's harassment by an entity that's engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring. And I want to make sure that I document Metro Court engaged in the pattern of conduct. I have not specifically mentioned this, but I have been to the Metro Court in Los Angeles. They are monitoring. LAPD engaging in what is terrorism and group stalking. That is a demon that's monitoring you, a group stalker that's monitoring you, these demon-possessed agencies, and then pulling you over as though they have some sort of reasonable suspicion or probable cause to stop you. That's a psychopath, all right? And they were monitoring me, and I captured this on video. It is published already, published documentation. The LAPD engaging in what is masquerading as though they're a legitimate police department agency, as though they were not already stalking you and then pulling you over for not having on your seatbelt when you were monitoring the whole time, knowing both when I pull my panties down, a whole demon that is maintaining an environment around me while you're stalking every moment of the day, and then pulling me over on Figueroa and 8th Street in the morning when I'm en route to work, stating that that I didn't have my seatbelt on, which in fact I did. But this is a demon that is, again, I want to be clear, knew the moment before I did not have my seatbelt on. When he ran into me, I had my seatbelt on. But this is a demon that knew beforehand. And this is also verified through the specific environment. I also then am given documentation to go to Metro Court. Metro Court is a facilitating venue. All of the environment is present at Metro Court, filled with the people of the state who are monitoring inside of that venue. And the people of the state are a bunch of demons who fill a courthouse. And you are talking about group stalking and monitoring inside of the courthouse. And it is not limited to the judges sitting on the bench. It is not limited to those who call themselves attorneys, both the DA and the public defender's office. I have also documented this under the angle of being subject to kidnapping by this same entity, where the entity was maintaining the specific environment and then making up information, again, just like LAPD did. And this is back in 2018, I believe. Yeah, 2018. And the entity is monitoring me in 2018. This is when LAPD is why I started documenting the state of California. Understand that. LAPD is why, because the stop was so peculiar. Okay. And there was peculiar in that I actually had my seatbelt on when this demon stopped me, but I actually did not have my seat on before I physically encountered him. Now, I've noticed that in my mind. Of course, I didn't admit that to him. And for all he knows, based on the natural, in the physical, I had my seatbelt on. So, but my question still remained in my mind. How did he know that I didn't have my seatbelt on before he pulled me over? And that's what stood out to me. And from that day on, it was October of 2018, I started documenting the state of California. I resigned from the law offices of Michael Bialis because the same pattern of conduct that I was subject to in Upland, California, look at that documentation that's captured in May of 2018. I summoned the Upland Police Department to my private residence in Upland. The light source is directly over my head. The entity is amplifying helicopter activity. They were monitoring me. And I was suspicious of it. I moved from San Bernardino County. I relocated to Los Angeles County. I was practicing law. The entity was monitoring me, and it was this traffic stop, where the entity did not have reasonable suspicion to stop me. All right. And I recorded the entire encounter, and I was surrounded by the specific environment that I had not yet identified. I had not yet identified the P.O.C., but I captured the P.O.C. And upon recognizing the pattern of this demonic entity that's monitoring through the government, you can go back and look at the documentation, and all of the pattern of conduct is there. I captured it. So I want to be clear. LAPD has been engaged in criminal monitoring for years. It started with them. These demons are the reason why I started documenting the state of California. And Metro Court is a state facilitating venue, and that's just one. It's not just Metro Court. Like I said, it's not just Rancho Cucamonga Superior Court, where I'm documenting the entity group stalking and a helicopter and the light source over me at that courthouse. This is a matter of documentation that already exists on the record. Okay? It is. By the way, I've also documented the appeals court in Riverside County, and I documented the California Supreme Court. Engaging in the pattern of conduct through facilitation, that is the unlawful. And it's criminal. It's not a civil matter where the entity is monitoring it, because it's serving to obstruct justice. Denying the basic First Amendment fundamental right to redress in a court. They were denying me the right to service of process. San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, who was monitoring, denied their statutory duty. It is a duty of their office, an obligation of their office to provide service of process to the person that I'm bringing suit against, okay? To the Attorney General of the state of California. They refused to do so, having no basis to do so whatsoever. And they were doing so while I was seeking to enforce my rights for this very criminal act. And that's why Thomas Garza, this goes back all the way back to the ongoing first criminal act of this entity. I want to be clear, there is history here. And the entity is the exact same entity, the Fontana Police Department, the San Bernardino Police Department, the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, the Ontario Police Department. It's one entity, okay? And the entity is engaging in an ongoing pattern of conduct, living at the crime scene. You're going to federal prison, monitoring with this entity.
While the sun remains here, it's never over a 7-Eleven at 2:47, contrary to what I documented on April 29th, 2022. This is the evidence that's going against what are the people of the state. Everybody that lives at Alvarado Gardens is engaging in criminal surveillance, which is the role of the people of the state, where the entity is engaged in criminally monitoring, which is what group stalking is. Group stalking is demonic activity, but it is the placement of an American citizen under surveillance by the government, maliciously in concert with the people of the state. And those that are living at the crime scene where the targeted individual, myself, is placed under surveillance, the police don't have a legal right to do it directly, and they shall not engage in it vicariously. And that's why this specific environment is here, and that's why you're looking at that light source at this time. And that is the evidence of what is not the sun over the Fontana Police Department, who are in my presence, group stalking on April 29th, 2022 at the same exact time. Remember, on April 29th, I got on Omnitrans and I traveled to Upland, California on Route 66 going westbound, which I captured on video. The entity is maintaining the light source over my head while I'm on that bus. I arrive at 4:18 p.m. getting off of Route 66 at Euclid Avenue and Arrow Boulevard. The light source is remaining over my head. At 4:18 p.m., which I've already documented and provided this as a visual for you to juxtapose the unnatural environment where LAPD is here today, engaging in ongoing provision of evidence against the people of the state. All of them are going to federal prison, buildings 1800 through 1818. All right, engaged in criminal monitoring, living at the crime scene, and this is evidence against speaker companies and Todd Speaker, the malice with which state is engaging in monitoring you and in the workplace, okay? There is no sun that's going to be present over the Route 66 bus stop where I got off over my head while I'm facing the Upland Public Library, which, by the way, the sun is remaining over the Upland Public Library as a matter of documentation when I remain at that venue, but not on the days when I go to the Fontana Lewis Library and then travel to the Upland Public Library on another day. That's not the natural environment either. Never is the sun over either of those venues when it's remaining over me here outside of the same exact leasing office from 8:23 a.m. until 3:39 p.m. P.O.C. Okay, and that audible activity of the entity sounding helicopter, I want to be clear, this is the ongoing evidence against the people of the state. 59 units are occupied with third-party group stalkers who live here with minor children and are engaging in an ongoing criminal system of surveillance on behalf of the government, for which they will sit in federal prison for a prolonged term. Okay, a prolonged term in federal prison for engaging in the system. That is an ongoing threat to my life, and while I have sought to enforce my rights by documenting it and establishing precedent, this is a term of years of engaging in the impermissible threat. Okay? It is currently, again, remember, they're walking by the light that's appearing in the shade while you're witnessing demonic patrolling. This is what this is. They're walking through the light that is appearing in the shade. Remember that. It is currently 3:40 p.m., and you're witnessing why the grounds upon which the loss of custody of third-party group stalkers under the age of majority. It is, again, 3:40 p.m., and this is P.O.C. at 1810 North Alvarado Street, and at 8:23 a.m. it was right here, and right here at 3:40 p.m. it is right here. That is capturing the P.O.C. That is that demonic pattern of conduct underway on behalf of the state that you heard amplifying helicopter activity. You remember all those facts while you're looking at demonic conduct underway by those over and under the age of majority, with a level of impunity that is worthy of removal of such minors and also placement in federal prison for a prolonged term. That is a delusional psychopath, a danger to the public. Okay? P.O.C.
All right. This is video documentation that is referring to, at approximately 4 minutes and 51 seconds, I then go into an additional means of documenting the repeated kidnapper, the Ontario Police Department, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, that have engaged in the pattern of conduct and by kidnapping, because it's not a lawful arrest and it's not a lawful confinement either when you are under surveillance, and it's not merely a false arrest. That would be a civil matter. This is a criminal matter, and in the same way that no one can snatch me off the street and throw me into their van and drive off somewhere, that's a kidnapping. This is what the police are engaging in when they're engaged in criminal surveillance, putting you in handcuffs and driving you away, regardless of the fact that there is a police an agency on the side of that vehicle. They're kidnapping while they're engaging in what is surveillance outside of the state and federal constitutional boundaries, which they are maliciously exercising fictitious authority under while they're engaged in gang stalking, and also doing so with the intent to obstruct justice, because the entity that's gang stalking is the entity that knows that they're being documented for gang stalking, hence stealing my documentation. So I went into more than just LAPD, but at approximately 4 minutes and 51 seconds, that's where I go into LAPD, who is again, like I stated in the video, it's the truth. Responsible as far as me beginning my documentation, understanding that it wasn't just in San Bernardino County, it wasn't just in Upland, it wasn't just Tracy at my apartment. It was occurring in Los Angeles as well because of the suspicious circumstances of that traffic stop. And I began documenting it diligently, and immediately you're understanding the threat that an entity is posing when you are faced with this sort of realization, and also the realization, who do you report that to when the police are the criminal? This is something that is a situation, a circumstance that no American citizen should be put in, but this is what the ordinary target individual is faced with, while also there, like I've spoken about before, faced with the ongoing campaign in the United States to render illegitimate any targeted individual as being one who is just suffering from some mental illness, by having those given a platform, given an ability to essentially speak to what are unfounded allegations when they make the same sort, or not even the same, because I wouldn't say that the people that have been on television and been on social media claiming that people are following them around, they never have any evidence to support it. They are very clearly inarticulate in the way, and they are on its face, it appears as though someone that is delusional, somebody that is imagining things, somebody that is suffering. And I want to be clear, that's that same demonic spirit. But the entity that is gang stalking American citizens is the same entity that is pushing out a false narrative about targeted individuals being mentally ill in order to render illegitimate any sort of claims that any of them would make and assert against anyone and against the government for targeting them. Okay, that doesn't work in the face of evidence, however. And so, nonetheless, I want to go back to the point. What you can see on the screen, you can't see this on the podcast, but I'm looking at what I documented in writing, and I also documented it in video. The video is what is stolen. That's what I'm referring to in details at approximately 4 minutes and 51 seconds, how LAPD gang stalking me, which I proved in video evidence. And it is equally proven, regardless of the fact that I didn't call it the P.O.C. yet, regardless of the fact that I didn't call it engineered light yet. But you will see engineered light all over if the evidence wasn't stolen. Engineered light is covering the part. I'm in downtown LA on the morning of October 16, 2018, and engineered light is covering all of the buildings that are in the shade, and the people of the state are pacing at 8th Street and Figueroa. Literally, the buildup in traffic, when you understand what the entity is doing under the fake sun, the buildup in traffic is about stopping me so that his name is Officer Umana, serial number 34674 with the Los Angeles Police Department on October 16, 2018, so that he is already in pursuit and trying to get in position with me, in alignment with me, where he is both gang stalking and also engaging what is criminal summoning, which is where you're subject to a traffic stop by the entity that's gang stalking you. That's the malicious engagement in the pattern of conduct. And the buildup in traffic is in order to get me in a circumstance where I was stopped, and right where I was stopped is where this demon, Officer Umana, serial number 34674, gets in perfect alignment behind my vehicle. And I am expounding in this written document all of the suspicious circumstances behind that stop, where there is no reasonable suspicion, where you're engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring as well. But I am in October 16, 2018, before getting to this juncture where I am at with this body of evidence referred to as the P.O.C. I am analyzing it and also substantiating why I conducted my own investigation about what I am subject to. And it includes the police, the circumstances and facts, and the details as to how is the reason why I had to initiate my own investigation to protect myself in recognizing a threat that is, again, the targeted individual's position, where you're threatened in a way that which you cannot necessarily define. You're not clear about, you're clear about it, but you're not able to clearly articulate and explain as to why. But again, the circumstances of a suspicious traffic stop and leaving from San Bernardino County, or the suspicious engagement by law enforcement there, and the encounters that I documented, for example, like I stated, May 23rd, 2018, before I moved away from the entity that was inside of my apartment, Tracy Banks, who engaged in what is physically attacking me, engaged in criminal summoning the police to my apartment where nothing happened whatsoever. Criminal summoning, in other words, and moving away from that. And as a licensed attorney practicing law in a different location, just going on with my life, which I'm perfectly, and I should have been able to do seamlessly as somebody with a law license, somebody with an impeccable record, somebody able to move somewhere, living in my car, get in another job with another law firm and save enough money, get an apartment and move on with that's exactly what I should have been able to do. The entity's been gang stalking me for years, and it is financially prohibitive while they do so. So the entity that's engaging in this is again the Los Angeles Police Department on October 16, 2018. And this is the document that I documented, that I noted, in other words, the circumstances of that stop. And it is citation number E as in Erica 675101, and all of the details pursuant to that. And it is shared with the corrupt courthouse, the Metropolitan Courthouse, who entertains criminal acts of the Los Angeles Police Department in the same way that the corrupt courthouse, Rancho Cucamonga Superior Court, entertains the corrupt and criminal conduct of the Ontario Police Department and the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, engaging in fictitious prosecutions. This is the entity doing so as I'm documenting it, and this is captured in 3 videos which show the specific environment. The specific environment is relevant to the pattern of conduct of federal group stalking and monitoring, that is being gang stalked, and the absence of any reasonable suspicion. You don't have reasonable suspicion. You're not suspicious of anything. You know exactly what I'm doing. That's the malice of the entity that is targeting. And when you are gang stalking through police, that is that which is executed with a reasonable objective to commit murder and kidnapping. That's the only reason why you're targeting through the police. And it is an unlawful threat. It's the highest threat, in fact, by the gang stalking entity to target through the police, who also like to use helicopters like the LAPD are doing in 2024 at Alvarado Gardens, where that specific environment is also over me. And so this is what I'm speaking about in that video. This is published on my website. This is the POC.wordpress.com, and it is under what is the state of, you click on the documentation tab, you click on the state of California's group stalking, it will open up another submenu, and under October 16, 2018, the log of events, where I took upon myself in order, and this is what anyone would do, any prudent person would do. The ordinary target individual might not have the wherewithal to do so, but that's why I'm advocating on behalf of the ordinary target individual that is typically and successfully criminally defamed, kidnapped, and subject to all the wiles of the enemy, which is using the Los Angeles Police Department to harass you through a traffic stop where they don't have reasonable suspicion, and they are aware of the moment, not like I stated, because it's the truth, when you pull your panties down, and also the second that you put your seatbelt on and off. And the circumstances of this traffic stop is the beginning, the outset of my undertaking the investigation of the state of California, the documentation of the state of California, which is what an American citizen should not be forced to do when the government, however, is the corrupt actor, when the government's the criminal. This is the inevitable circumstance, and it's a plight that is inhumane, all right? It's a plight that is set up to result in what is kidnapping and murder, where the entity that is engaging in surveillance. And this is, again, a direct contradiction to doctrines such as probable cause, doctrines such as reasonable suspicion, where you have surveillance underway. This is a part of the construct of the system, the government, the operation of government that's creating to make people like myself, people that are not a part of this system, ignorant and comfortable with regard to privacy rights and constitutional protections and freedom that you only think you have, but you are not as free as you think you are in the United States, that is, where we have a constitution that creates the illusion of freedom. All right. We are actually under surveillance, and the federal group stalking, monitoring, gang stalking is revealing the criminal acts committed by that entity that's engaging in surveillance. And gang stalking is that which is committed for purposes of criminally defaming in order to kidnap and ultimately to murder. All right. So it is currently 5:32 a.m. This is video documentation pursuant to that pattern of conduct. And it's also relevant. I want to state the entity that's engaging in this is the same entity that is engaging in a pattern of stealing my intellectual property and my video evidence, which is a threat to my life, my safety, my well-being, and my reputation. The entity that's engaging in gang stalking is doing so in order to falsely depict the character of the American citizen who is in fact being targeted, but lacking the ability to prove it, the perhaps even the skill set necessary to prove it. And in my understanding the position of the ordinary target individual, I am speaking on their behalf. I'm advocating that status, that position. um, that person that exists in the country, while I'm also subject to it and I'm protecting myself, I'm proving the government's criminal conduct, but I'm also advocating, speaking on behalf of those that are subject to the same thing, and they weren't able to prove it. They're already dead, or they're already sitting somewhere in a facility being kidnapped, subject to kidnapping and psychological torture, by the way. And the entity, and they're subject to ongoing harassment. They're just suffering gang stalking. They're suffering targeting, and with no way to defend themselves, protect themselves, enforce their rights in the United States, that is. And the government that's engaging in a pattern of theft of my property and profiting from theft of my content, misrepresenting it as their own, and would assert to be engaging in any sort of investigation is the same entity. And I want to be clear, people in the position such as Jason Isaac Fields is somebody that is not conducting a legitimate investigation. This is somebody that has been engaged in targeting me for years, both with the government, in the shoes of the government, perhaps even abusing a government position, while also engaged in the pattern of conduct with people, the people of the state whom I have relationships with. Again, engaged in a long-term sexual relationship with the very heavily documented gang stalker Tracy Banks, and doing so in furtherance of that conspiracy as an entity to murder and kidnap me, stealing my content, profiting from theft of my content, misrepresenting it, and publishing it out as their own. These are the things that Jason Isaac Fields has engaged in, that the entity has engaged in. And this person is not a legitimate government actor, is not a hero, is not a partner of mine, has been engaged in targeting and trying to conceal the fact that I've been targeted for years. And that is to accomplish what is a malicious and mysterious murder, so that in the event of this is not going to happen by God's grace, but the entity conspired to accomplish murder, and murder under suspicious circumstances, so that there's no evidence speaking to what it is that I'm documenting, that I've been documenting historically, 2018. That's invaluable evidence speaking to the beginning of what I captured, what I was stating from the outset. And the entity stealing that evidence is irreversible obstruction of justice, and no amount of money and no investigation is going to give me back that invaluable evidence. And that is something that is worthy of federal prison. The entity is not just gang stalking and going to write a check and that rights the wrong of the government that tried to murder me and get away with murder, try to murder me and then have defame me in doing so, stating something like I killed myself. This is what the entity that's gang stalking me intended to do. People like Jason Isaac Fields and Tracy Banks intended to do. All right. This is the entity that's engaging in that. That's an unlawful threat. It is pursuant to federal stalking, however. And I also want to be clear again, the entity is engaging in what is theft of my property that is proving the exact thing that I've been stating, that the government is engaged in surveillance and that the government is gang stalking for purposes of murder and kidnapping while they're engaging in surveillance, knowing exactly the probative value of what I'm documenting when Officer Umana of the Los Angeles Police Department and his supervisor are on video in the specific environment engaging in what is criminal summoning, not a traffic stop pursuant to reasonable suspicion. And they were doing so with a bunch of demons at 8th and Figueroa who were pacing all around, monitoring me together. All right. It is currently, like I stated, 5:36 a.m. on Sunday, May 11, 2025. And this is P.O.C.